Well as Raina spoke from an academic standpoint, I'll speak far more practically from an activist standpoint, because practical is how most activists tend to see these things. I'm actually encouraged, when we first talked about this idea of academia meets activism, there was sort of this underlying thought that it meant that we were somehow at crossroads, and I think quite the opposite. I look at so many movements where academics and activists have different viewpoints, see things differently across the issues that they're working on. I really haven't seen that among the individuals and groups here, and we have the real benefit of having a number of academics and organizations, however few, already operating in this space. So I'm actually encouraged that we have a really nice groundwork to build on. And of course, the idea of academia meets activism was really the basis for how the Council for Responsible Genetics became an organization in the first place. Almost now, next year will be our 30th anniversary. And 30 years ago, a number of academics, however defined, and activists, public health, reproductive rights, occupational health, environmental activists came together through common cause because they saw issues, biotechnology issues, that just weren't being addressed in any other form. They weren't being addressed in the universities. They weren't being addressed in the activist communities. And so many of the individuals, many of whom are here today, Raina is on our board, past board members like Stuart Newman and Susan Wright, and of course Patricia's on our board, Shelley, who I think will be here tomorrow. So there's a lot of people, part of the Tarrytown community, that have been part of the CRG community, and many academics and many activists as well, who are not with us today. A few of them, David Brower, who was one of the founders of Friends of the Earth, who is here with us. David Brower, the great environmentalist, was an original board member of CRG. So is Tony Mizaki, the great public health and occupational health activist. And from its very inception, CRG was really a mix of the academic and the activist. From its beginnings, we published Gene Watch magazine, which brought together both academics and activists to discuss these issues in a more formal, literary way. But we engaged in campaigns, and we continue to this day to engage in campaigns and mix the academic with the activist. We publish books. We have a book that we published last year. We have a book this year and a book coming out next year. We still publish Gene Watch magazine, and we produce reports, and but we also run campaigns. We run campaigns on biolab safety, genetic privacy, and many other issues. So I think it's through that perspective that I've really come to see the academic activist working together. And so for me, it's really not about the why. For many times when you talk about these issues, well, why do we need to justify academics and activists working together? For me, it's really about how. How do we get to academics and activists working together better? And as an activist, I can tell you that there is probably no greater resource that I have than the academic community. I base, and I'm sure most activists will tell you this, I base so much of my work on the empirical research, on the writings, on the case studies that academics provide. But I also benefit from the the reserved academic that I can work with to bring in to testify at a hearing, that I can bring in to write a brief to an interested party. It's that authority that comes with academia that we as activists oftentimes lack. And so for me, it's very important to keep those two communities working together. And quite frankly, I think those two communities have worked together quite well. And I think not too long ago of the Bring Your Genes to Cal campaign in the summer of 2010, which I thought was very illustrative of how academics and activists can work together, and how many of the resources that each brings to bear can benefit each other. For those of you who aren't familiar with what happened with that campaign, In early May of 2010, the University of California, Berkeley announced that they would be sending incoming freshmen a kit to swab their cheeks with just this little bit of information that would then be sequenced for 3 supposedly innocuous gene variants to begin a program for incoming students on personalized medicine. And there were significant issues regarding consent, regarding privacy and storage of the information, none of which had been addressed by the university. The first people to raise that issue were the academics. We're the academics at Berkeley, because it's oftentimes the academics who are really the canaries in the coal mine for many of the issues that activists work on. And so it was a number of people who are here today, and many of the professors at Berkeley, from Troy Duster and Karis Thompson to Laura Nader, David Winikoff, and many others who raised this issue, who got the first public attention to this issue, who brought this to the attention of myself and other activists to get involved and encouraged us to get involved. And continued to beat on the doors of the university while the activists moved in and went to work with the media and the public realm. And as this campaign built, it was the academics that continued to write the articles, and in fact, quite frankly, the better articles that were written on this issue, some of Troy Duster's articles in the Chronicle of Higher Education and such, were really some of the important pieces that helped move the thought process on this issue forward. And then, of course, the activists, who moved in, and we did the research, and we did the coalition building and the grassroots organizing and the pressure to build an effort to get a political hearing. And then, of course, it was the academics who came and joined with us to testify at that hearing and to provide their viewpoint and their knowledge. And so it was really the coming together of both these communities that contributed to the success of that campaign that helped roll back some of the Bring Your Genes to Cal program. And it's really that type of academic activist collaboration that we need to continue and that we need to be able to build on. So for me, as an activist, the most important thing that I need to know is what you're doing. Because I'll be honest, when I'm working on a campaign, or when I'm working on all the different aspects of literature that go with a campaign, I'm searching for information in the limited time frame that I have. And I have the best of my research capabilities, and I have the network of people that I know, and that's about it. And I can't tell you how many times I found out about the work of an academic or a researcher that I could have used, that I could have benefited me, that I wasn't aware of at the time, simply because I didn't have that type of communication. And I think, and I'm quite certain that type of issue is the same on the other foot of an academic. I'm sure most academics know very little about the types of campaigns I'm working on, and the types of campaigns that others are working on. So I want to know much more about the courses that you're teaching. I want to know about the materials that you're using. I want to know about the research you're doing now, the research you've just done. There's really so much I don't know. And so for me, for practical purposes, we need I think in terms of answering the question, academia makes activism, where do we go from here? I think we need an organizational resource that allows us to do this. To me, it's really the obvious outgrowth of all the conversations we've been having at Tarrytown anyway. But, you know, I look at other forums, and I always like to build upon areas where this has been done before. And I look at one group that I've been involved with for some time, that most of you have probably never heard of, called the Privacy Coalition. And I think the only other group I know who's in it is the ACLU, who's also here. The Privacy Coalition was the coming together of a huge number of organizations that came from a lot of different walks of life, all that were concerned with one general area of privacy, some coming at it from electronic privacy, some coming at it generally, some coming at it from health privacy, some coming from various areas, but all concerned about privacy. So all these groups and individuals came together, and they have a website. They have a website that talks about the campaigns that different groups are doing on, that talks about the work that different individuals are doing. They meet monthly, and they have a listserv. And during those monthly meetings, they bring in academics and activists to talk about the work that they're doing. And they have a call where every month people call, you can call in, they meet in Washington, but you don't have to. And they talk about the issues that they're working on. And they collaborate and they share this information. I really think that that's where we need to move as a community. We really need to know a lot more on a day-to-day. I need to know a lot more about what everybody is doing, because we all need to be building on each other's work. And so that's the resource that I'd like to suggest that we pursue. And I'm happy to discuss this further as we continue the conversation.